Today we're going to have a historical destruction of the moon landing charade, courtesy of NASA. Bear with me. So first up, we're going back to the 70s to an old school NASA documentary where NASA lay out their plans, their goals for the near future in space. These goals were made fresh off the back of the so-called moon landing success. Of course, reviewing these claims, these goals, all these years later, seeing the lack of progress, not only that, seeing how absurd the claims are, and it makes it even more obvious that the daftness that is the moon landing was nothing more than a silly theatrical charade. There you go, your man trapped in his spherical globe.
Several years ago, a professor at Princeton named Charade conceived of the idea of putting large colonies in space, large artificial places where people could live and work. And what we did was to gather together a group of university people to look at the problem of how you would start this whole endeavor, of how you'd build the very first colony.
This is Taurus, the concept that has evolved from the work of these teams of scientists and engineers. They believe the huge space colony could be built before the year 2000.
So NASA hoped to have roulette wheel inspired space colonies in space by the year 2000. I believe he goes on to say that they would hold up to 10,000 people, have cattle farms, high streets, tower blocks, all sorts of crazy claims. But of course, these crazy claims come back to haunt NASA and of course highlight how silly their previous claims were. And of course, these claims were all based off the back, assuming that the moon landing was real, which of course it was anything but.
The space colony has the ability to provide a facility in space where human beings can conduct fruitful industry.
You can blag your space station with some pantomime, some theatrics, some computer graphics, some CGI, high altitude planes and drones that are nowhere near as high and as a result not needing to go anywhere near as fast, more than likely several of them. You can blag that and gullible individuals will soak that up, but you can't blag space colonies with dairy farms, high streets, tower blocks, tiered parks and fields, holding 10,000 people, can ya? History has a way of coming back to haunt liars.
The amount of sunlight that is present in every square mile of space is enormous, and that provides enormous energy. One of the things that one can do is to build very large solar power stations which collect sunlight, and to use that power.
Now that might seem like a good idea back in the 70s. I remember the 70s, the skies were a lot clearer. These days the skies, we get these white lines appear, and back in the old days they would disappear. These days these lines spread out and cause this thin, creamy, horrible layer that spreads all across the sky and makes what would have been a beautiful day look totally overcast. So this fantasy that you were holding in your heart just wouldn't have held up anyway.
Either at the colony or to transmit it to Earth in the form of a microwave beam where it is collected on Earth and put into the ordinary electrical power system. The materials for the colony and for the power station largely come from the moon. It is much cheaper to haul the materials from the lunar surface than it is to bring things up from the Earth because of the difference of gravities. And so it is the abundance of good material for building aluminum structures and glass structures in space.
So Matey Boy thought here they were going to mine the moon for most of the material to make these roulette wheel inspired space colonies that were going to house 10,000 people plus cattle farms and everything else that would be in place 23 odd years ago.
that come from the moon that make the idea work.
Constructed almost entirely from ore mined on the moon, the Taurus
Ridiculous! Look at the claims.
colony would become home for 10,000 people. They would live, work, and be protected within a vast wheel more than a mile in diameter. The Earth-like environment would even simulate our gravity as the wheel revolves once each minute.
The other materials like food and water are maintained locally within the colony. The initial supplies are brought up from
Look at it. Tiered fields, solar panel fields.
Earth, and then eventually the colony becomes self-sustaining. We got the agricultural system designed so that we could actually feed 10,000 people in an area of just a little over 100 acres. This is very, very, very efficient. We did it by utilizing the sunlight that's available all the time in space, by optimizing the temperatures, by not having storms or things like that that damage crops. And we increased the carbon dioxide levels a little bit so the plants grow a little faster. By playing all these tricks, we were able to generate this
You got that right, tricks.
fairly efficient farm in our design.
From dairy farms to manufacturing, the concept of living and working in space is a possibility with existing technology. That new space home, located 250,000 miles from Earth, would even have a far-out address.
There are places in space between the Earth and the Moon called the libration points. And these are places basically where the gravity from the Moon and the gravity from the Earth cancel each other out, and an object placed at that location remains there and doesn't drift off. They're called
These libration points sound kind of trippy. In a fantasist's mind, they'll go right on one on that.
L4 and L5. There are two of them, one before the Moon and one on the trailing side of the Moon.
Curious, who verified that, me old mate?
Space colonization, beneficial occupancy of possibly the last and highest frontier, the space beyond Earth.
Yeah, that didn't age well, did it, chaps? That only highlighted how absurd NASA's claims and, of course, performances were back in the late 60s and the 70s. And, of course, I'm talking about the moon landing. Wonder what moon landing legend Buzz Aldrin's got to say about this.
Well, there's the gentleman waving his hand afterwards.
What was the scariest moment of the journey?
Scariest. It didn't happen. It could have been scary. Circuit breaker.
And they just start making stuff up.
Yeah.
Like that Neil Armstrong guy. Have you seen him on the talk shows?
Neil Armstrong, you mean the first man to walk on the moon?
Talk about a fish story.
Yeah.
Man, and they're buying it.
Oh, yeah.
Now we're going to nip back in time. Weeks after the moon landing success, we get to see Buzz, Neil and Michael make it rather obvious for anyone, again, like I said just now, with a basic understanding of human psychology and behaviour. If you'd travelled on a high-speed rocket at ludicrous speeds for a vacuum, circled a ball, landed and came back here, you'd be buzzing till the day you died. Yet as we're about to see, these guys look like they won the lottery but lost the ticket. So let's have a look. This is obviously the Apollo 11 moon landing post press conference. Man's greatest achievement. They left here on a rocket, went into a vacuum, circled a ball, landed on it, docked with an orbiting craft, and then flew back, landed in the ocean, came back. An amazing, amazing achievement. An incredible adventure. And we join them at the start of the press conference. They're literally oozing excitement, adrenaline, still buzzing at the after effects of this incredible journey. Let's have a look.
At this time, I'd like to introduce the Apollo 11 crew, astronauts Neil.
I've got to tell you, they've just come back from the moon, yeah? The greatest achievement of all time. I look happier on a Monday morning before I'm going to work.
Armstrong, Michael Collins, Edwin Aldrin. Neil?
I mean, anyone with any common sense here can already see they're lying. They're uncomfortable. I don't know the situation behind it, but I mean, we saw the footage. The Apollo, one of the Apollo landers taken off a few weeks ago, how terrible the production of that was. And of course, we saw when Neil and Buzz were coming back from the moon, supposedly last week or whenever it was, and he was all over the shot. Just terrible. It's awful. It's fake. And if you needed more evidence to just satisfy yourself, not that there's enough evidence already, you only need to watch these three guys. Watch their body language. Watch the sketchiness about them all. Watch the awkwardness about it all. It's obvious.
It was our pleasure to have participated in one great adventure. It's an adventure that took place not just in the month of July, but rather...
I actually feel sorry for Neil here. I feel sorry for him. No wonder he became a recluse.
one that took place in the last decade. We all here and the people listening in today had the opportunity to share that adventure over its...
When you do something that's out of the ordinary, especially this dangerous, like flying on rockets, landing on balls, flying through vacuums, getting back in rockets, coming back to another ball. You do stuff dangerous like that, you're filled with adrenaline. You're buzzing. You do something like that, you'd be buzzing for days. I mean, come on, look at these three guys. There's no adrenaline involved with these guys. Only awkwardness and sketchiness. It's obvious. I keep saying it, but it fucking
developing and unfolding in the past months and years. It's our privilege today to share with you some of the details of that final month of July.
Dear, oh dear, oh dear. We won't go on much longer, but you get the point. You got three guys, sketchy as hell, awkward as hell, supposedly come back from a great journey where they'd be filled with adrenaline, buzzing. And look at it. Look at them.
That was certainly the highlight for the three of us.
Wasn't it just? I'm sure you couldn't control yourself, Neil. It's a joke. It's just all one big pantomime. And when you know, you know. It's just so bloody obvious. Anyway, enough of that. We've seen footage before of these guys. We've seen this footage, to be honest, of these guys before. And people pointing out the body language. I just thought I'd put my little take on it. Look, just obvious. Cheers.